intro, and we're going to bring my man in. I'm so excited that Leo made it. That is cool. And here we go. Hope y'all can hear it.
Leo Zagami.
Illuminati.
Leo Zagami.
Illuminati.
Leo Zagami. Leo Zagami.
Illuminati. Illuminati.
Leo Zagami.
Illuminati.
Leo Zagami. Leo Zagami.
The New World Order.
Leo Zagami.
The New World Order.
Leo Zagami.
The New World Order.
Leo Zagami. Leo Zagami.
Nice groove, Angry Tiger. Thank you for this intro. Very original, very original.
Welcome, brother. Welcome. How are you, man? My paisan. ¿Cómo está?
It's a pleasure to be on with you again, Frank, in this Angry Tiger version. I'm glad that you're doing well. Your podcast is booming. And so here we are with a new chapter in my history, this new book of mine, which is The Rise and Fall of a Frankist Monster, as well as last year's Volume 12, which was the end of my famous Confessions of an Illuminati series. So I'm here for your questions and, of course, for the questions of your audience.
Excellent. You hear that, ladies and gentlemen? Think of some good questions, and towards the end, we'll ask Leo some questions because I have a lot of questions for him. First of all, let's hit the book a little bit. I want to tell you, the book is great, and I'm going to say something, Leo. I'm very proud of you because a lot of people will not stand up for what's right. They'll do what they think other people want to hear. And you actually went against the kind of the mainstream right in this book. And you explained how things really are with Zionism. We have that plague. That's a plague. There's so many plagues upon earth that Satan has brought us. And Zionism, I think, is one of the biggest ones. And you expose that in the book. And I just want to commend you for actually saying, you write books for a living. You could lose people writing this, but you told the truth anyway. And thank you, Leo. So comment on your book. Let us know a little bit about it.
Well, yeah, like you said, I mean, it's a controversial topic, especially because for many years it was championed by the right. The fact that Epstein's files will be fully disclosed was one of the reasons why we voted for another term, Donald J. Trump. But it was disappointing, and for that reason, I decided to publish a book that could make people understand that no matter if you are on the right or on the left, it seems like once you arrive in Washington, sooner or later you're going to be compromised, because behind the scenes there is some very powerful people, and those powerful people are either the Jesuits or either the Sabbatean Frankists. So it wasn't easy. Like you said, you lose maybe some people, some possibilities of promoting the book, because I had difficulty in promoting this book on Jeffrey Epstein. However, it's going well. So, I mean, I don't know, people seem to still enjoy it, seem to still be able to understand the relevance of this book, which is the only book which discusses the sectarian and religious nature and let's say even the cultural milieu behind Jeffrey Epstein, which was never really fully disclosed. So we hear a lot about Jeffrey Epstein. We hear also many journalists who maybe focused on one or another side of things. I mean, here we have still to be fully disclosed millions of files, and that already shows there is something wrong at the White House. There is something wrong in this Trump administration, because otherwise there would be no reason for covering up and for creating also a lot of problems for his own movement. Because one of the things that most annoyed me was when Trump attacked his own followers who were, eager to know more about what was hiding behind the Jeffrey Epstein files, especially because initially it seemed like even Pambon, I have them on my table, I'm here ready, to release them. And then suddenly there was this really embarrassing turn of events, which in the end are unjustifiable. I mean, like I said, there is still millions of files. And also there has been politicians from the Republican Party, like Massey, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who have basically given up their position almost, because they are going against their own party. So, of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene gave up formally. Massey is still in there fighting. But we are talking about a fight that for the next few months is going to be very difficult, because there is still people in the MAGA movement, America First, that are still there drinking the Trump Kool-Aid and not willing to make any further analysis. However, this book, as you know, it's very marginally dedicated to Trump's involvement, because Trump's involvement, yes, was for many decades with Jeffrey Epstein, but still we don't have any confirmation of criminal wrongdoing. But those ambiguous elements were definitely underlined in my book. My book
a lot of circumstantial evidence that he was heavily involved with Epstein. And I like that, the fact that, we have to go on what we have facts of, right?
Yeah, but what you have is, for example, Lex Wexner, the role of Lex Wexner, the role of many other powerful people who apparently are those friends who in the last phone call Marjorie Taylor Greene had with Trump will get very upset if they will be, fully exposed. And my book fully exposes this ancient Jewish sect, which has been keeping hostage the people of Israel, was also behind the very foundation of Israel. And I explain also the history of Zionism that might have had moments, for example, initially Zionism, when Theodor Herzl brought it forward for the first few years, it was then promoted as something that could be linked in a religious way. And in fact, there were some rabbis who interpreted in that way. But then there was also labor Zionism. So then you had these two forces of Zionism, which, as you know, in my book I describe. One is a revisionist Zionism, and the other one is labor Zionism. And they created the divide et impera, the ones that are fighting each other, but in reality they are the creation of the same sectarian reality. And on top of that, as you know, I also explain in my book the fact that Zionism is not only a creation of the Jewish people, it goes all the way back to the Puritans, to Oliver Cromwell, to those Puritans who came here with the Mayflower, those Puritans who, with the Cromwell, led the Jews back to Great Britain with the idea to then eventually bring them back to Israel. So it was almost like a large chunk of Jewish people was played. And it's actually this one of the things that maybe makes me more happy, the fact that I have Jewish friends, even Orthodox Jews, who compliment me for this book because of the accuracy, because of the fact that we are not doing any Jewish bashing or anti-Semitism here. We are simply stating the facts behind certain things. Then, of course, these facts might be unpleasant, might be uncomfortable, but I prefer it that way.
Right. No, yeah, the truth is uncomfortable. right? When it comes to the anti-Semitism and all that, I mean, historically speaking, okay, Akashwande Jews are not Semitic. Okay, Palestinians are Semitic, but Akashwande Jews are not. So I have
at the end of the book.
So people don't even understand what those words mean when they say
at the end of the
anti-Semitic in
book,
public.
I explained that both the Jews as well as the Palestinians, first of all, need to recognize the fact that they're both indigenous people of that land. And once they recognize that fact, then they could maybe move forward. However, if they accuse each other of not being the rightful owners of that land, then it becomes very difficult. I understand that the Jews have been also pushed to go back to Israel, because my book shows even up until the early 1930s, even until the Holocaust was around the corner, when Adolf Hitler arrived to power, there was still a lot of Jews who didn't want to go to Israel.
So let me ask you a question, Leo. You're very well learned on this stuff. So I always tell people, and I believe this as I'm just like factually speaking, Jewish is a religion. That's not really, if you go back to tribes. If we go back to like our Tuscan tribes, we had the Etruscans, we had many tribes in Italy, right? So in the tribes that were indigenous people of the Middle East, they don't have blonde hair and blue eyes. They're not, you know what I'm saying?
We have to understand that there was there was a number of tribes. Only 2 tribes, let's say, are the ones that survived and that are well known. One is the Sephardic Jews, which are clearly Middle Eastern. You can see the way the Sephardic Jews are completely different from the Ashkenazi Jews. However, the Ashkenazi Jews have their own DNA. On the contrary of the infamous myth of the Khazarians, which was simply people who embrace the Jewish religion. That doesn't make you a Jewish person.
Right.
So I stick to the DNA studies in this book, and I don't speculate beyond that. Even myself, I have Ashkenazi blood. But a minimum percentage. That just to explain that there is within, of course, like you said, there is different tribes, different people come from different places. But we have to understand also that the Jews were pushed to go back to Israel, even when they wanted to come to America, even when they wanted to go back in other places that maybe they found themselves more comfortable in Central Europe, in Eastern Europe. But there was definitely a great persecution. There were pogroms, there was the Holocaust, and all this was organized by almost, that is the thing that it becomes even more uncomfortable for a lot of us historians. There is Zionists and Jews who helped the Nazis. And that is something that, of course, we don't want to discuss, the transfer agreement, because it's something that people don't even know much about. But the transfer agreement, in a way, gave the possibility to a lot of Jews to be sent to Israel, and at the same time for the Nazis to continue being participant to the banking system. Because if those organizations like B'nai B'rith, the Paramasonic Jewish B'nai B'rith, blocked the Nazis from the very start with the banking system, they would have had no possibility of going further with Adolf Hitler. It was because, of course, there was some people who didn't care, and those people who didn't care, who might be complacent. Even Adolf Hitler himself was Jewish and was the product of a Sabbatean Frankist background. Sabbatean Frankist is this sect, for those who don't know it, in a nutshell, born out of Judaism with Shabbatai Zevi, and then Jacob Franco claimed to be the reincarnation of Shabbatai Zevi, and these messiahs who claim to be the messiahs because, on the contrary of Christians who have accepted Jesus as the Messiah and Savior, in Judaism you don't have that element of acceptance of a Messiah, because they haven't accepted Jesus, so they're open to a bunch of false prophets who could just come tomorrow morning, even to this day, and claim, I am the rightful Messiah. You have, you got it wrong up until yesterday. And that was what happened with the arrival of Shabbatai Zevi. However, in my book, I also explain that those same people who, like the Puritans, Christian Puritans, were actually behind the father of Shabbatai Zevi. They were behind the initial steps of the Sabbateans, who then embraced Shabbatai Zevi as the Messiah, who then invited the tribes, of course, the Jewish people of that time, to go back to Israel. It was the first time that the Jews were actually invited to go back to Israel. And there had been within Europe a guy called Manasseh ben Israel, who convinced Oliver Cromwell to let the Jews back to England, who had been influenced himself by another important Jewish figure, who started this idea of the Jews having to go back to Israel. It was this gentleman here called Isaac Laprière, who then inspired with a book this other gentleman up here, who was Manasseh ben Israel. And these people kind of worked hand in hand with the Jesuits. And so at that point, we understand that the whole of the elite, it includes the Sabbatean Frankists, which generated from the Marranos, the Conversos, because even the founder of the Jesuits was accused of being himself a Jewish person. At the time, the Inquisition described the two types of Jews, the Conversos and the Marranos. The Marranos were the pigs, the ones that continued to practice in secret Judaism, while instead the Conversos were genuine converts to Christianity. Now, Ignazio Loyola became the founder of the Jesuits, and in fact, his first secretary was himself a Conversos. And there were a lot of Jewish people at the early stages of the Jesuits. Paradoxically, after 50 years, they prohibited the entrance to any Conversos or any Jew or any person of Jewish descent. So it was kind of paradoxical. But the fact that there was this element of bringing the end of times to fruition, bringing the people of Israel back to Israel, because otherwise then times couldn't manifest. So it was almost like
they're trying to force the prophecy.
Yeah, it was almost like, pushing this.
Are they still doing that today, do you think?
Well, I mean, today they have manifested fully an Israel state after the Second World War. That happened also because of what happened during the Second World War, because only in that way the state of Israel was finally approved and recognized, even in the early stages, because of what happened with the Holocaust. The Holocaust was itself a great tragedy. And in fact, I talk about this tragedy in the book, and I also explain the name Holocaust in itself means it's like a burning, a ritual offering of sorts, a human sacrifice of sorts. In reality, it should be called simply a Shoah. But the Holocaust is almost like a forced term that has been used for this genocide. That was terrible. I mean, the systematic persecution and murder of millions of Jews is a tragedy. And for that reason, we'll never have to fall into the errors of anti-Semitism. And that is, as you know, also how I introduced the book. The book is a book that needs to explain that Jeffrey Epstein was, yes, working for Israel, but he was actually working for a sect that owns Israel. So the difference with the majority of what we hear today in the mainstream narrative, even in the alternative media, some people say Epstein was working for Mossad. Epstein was a tool of Israel. No, Israel is a tool of the Sabbatean Frankists, and the Sabbatean Frankists, they don't rule only Israel. Israel is their creation, but they have their elite groups here in the United States. People like Wexner founded the mega group, the Jewish Study Group, in 1991. And Les Wexner had a key role, which is still held secretive by the government. They're trying to protect people like Wexner or Lauder, from Estée Lauder, the famous family of the cosmetics. But
Leo, I can't believe I'm sitting here. My father, who immigrated here from Italy, okay, if I told him that our government's protecting pedophiles and not releasing a list of powerful pedophiles, he's rolling over in his grave, because that's not what he thought he was coming here to. You know what I mean? I am in awe of what is going on here, and I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry. I just
no. You said
you said something that made me think of this exact statement. It's unbelievable, Leo. I'm a financial guy, right? I do a financial report. That's one of the mainstays of my show, and I have great guests like you on. And I know the bankers, and I know the lineage of the bankers, and there's a lot of Zionism, Jewish Sabbatinians, as you said, Jesuits. As you said, I am a Catholic. I still am a practicing Catholic. I am a sedevacantist. I don't know if you speak Latin or not, but so we don't believe in a pope. You know what I'm saying? We don't need the church. We have the sacraments, and we have,
I wrote a few books on topics, so I think that I described.
So yeah, you know what I'm saying. So I still that's how I choose to worship Jesus Christ. So my thing is that even with all, I know the Roman Catholic Church is totally corrupt, rotten from the inside out. We're full of this rot by these powerful families. And I think, Leo, are there families we don't even know about? Even guys like you don't know about?
Because I think that actually this book has mentioned a lot of those families that nobody talks about, and some of them are in Epstein's little black books, as you know, and people that are not commonly known. That is how it works here. My book is trying to point that out. I think that for 12 books, the series, the Illuminati Confession series, I really focused on how this world is controlled on each side, what is their involvement, and how it all works and operates. Now that I've completed the confessions, the Illuminati Confessions, I'm focusing on one topic at a time and kind of digging deeper in that topic. And one of the first topics I wanted to dig deeper was, without any doubt, the Sabbatean Frankist, because when I did volume 12, which is the last book of my confession series, the eye represents the eye in the all-seeing triangle. And that eye is the eye that we also find Novo Ordo Secularum on our $1 bill, is the eye at the base of our monetary system, which is also being corrupt by the Sabbatean Frankists, because let's not forget that the Federal Reserve was founded with the help of people like the Warburgs, who, like in Jeffrey Epstein's book, I show how the Warburg was a family that, together with the Schiff, without them, they would have not been the Soviet Union, because they were the only ones who helped financially in a moment in which the banking system was isolating the Bolsheviks, and they helped Leon Trotsky, who was himself a Sabbatean Frankist. So the fact that we find a pyramid on top with an eye, a controlling eye over the whole system, and that system has been fully explained by me from volume 1 to volume 12. And now with the books like, instead, this one on Epstein, I start digging deep on each topic, and that's what I'm going to do in the next few years. I'm going to do essays that can dig deeper on topics that I might have maybe dedicated one chapter, or a sub-chapter here and there. but they need a much more in-depth evaluation and analysis. And it's been, for me, 20 years of Illuminati Confessions, which I'm now gladly celebrating with a special podcast, which I do every Saturday. It's 2006, 2026. Imagine this. At the time when I started in the fall of 2006, there was only me, David Icke, Alex Jones, a few other people that talk about these topics. It was really a bunch of people. You can count them on one hand, not even on two hands. And so it was thanks to David Icke that initially I got my blog known. It was after Greg Zismansky with the Arctic Beacon, and we went on with the Genesis Broadcasting Network, exposing a lot of what was going on at the time. And tell you the truth, what I discussed 20 years ago is still valid. I mean, 20 years ago, I said in one of my articles and one of my shows, the Illuminati are basing their system on China. China is the future for them of the New World Order, unfortunately. And today, I think that here at the Tiger's Den, we can say that a lot of those interviews, early interviews, shows, articles which I wrote back then manifested. They came to fruition. Even Obama became president, as I predicted, and he was definitely a candidate for the office of Antichrist. I also predicted what will have happened in 2008 with Lehman Brothers. I mean, there was a lot of things that came into fruition. Then during the years, the Pope, of course, became a Jesuit Pope at one point. So we had a complete change in the Vatican that fully confirmed what I was denouncing for many years. So for me, it's very important to support new podcasters like you, but also to remember to everyone who is following us that Leo Zagami has been saying these things for a very long time. And it's
absolutely. And that's why I have you on. I mean, look, all of this stuff that we talk about, that you're talking about, my audience is probably amazed that I'm talking about that right now, because I understand it exists. And I think it's I talk about the spiritual world. I talk about love a lot, Leo, that we can't let that get sucked out of us by all of this. Right. And I say all of this stuff is real. I believe a lot of it's real. Some of it we can prove, some of it we can't, but this is for God to handle. We can only handle so much. You know what I mean? So, I mean, having you on is a great treat for me and my viewers. I want to get your take. You wrote this excellent article, and guys and girls, if you have not been to leozagami.com, you need to go there and subscribe to his newsletter. And it's a great place. He's got this article here, and it said the truth about the New World Order, Trump, and the 2026 birth of the continental superstates. And before I get into this, I want to say hello to everybody in the chat. I haven't done that yet, Leo. You're a friendly guy. You understand, right? I'm not trying to take you away from your time.
Absolutely.
Okay, we got Nostradamus. We got Lila Decker. We got Risha M. We got Karen Carpenter, the dead mother of the Tiger's Den. Real Jason Barker, Knights of the Storm, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, Saturdays. Check him out. We got Levi, Narrow Way, Narrow Gates Ministries, Skunk Hollow Rose Gardens, Do Not Obey. Who else did I? Radio Shack, I see you in there. And we have Dustin Helm in there. And Yona. What is happening, DJ? Hi, Yona. Good to see you there, brother. Skunk Hollow Rose Gardens and Ricky Anything Possible. All right, so anyways, we're checking the chat there. But you wrote this great article, and I love the allegory that you used out of 1984, where, you know, and you don't mind if we talk about this, right?
Absolutely. Okay? I mean, this is a part of my most recent articles on leozagami.com, which include, of course, this comparison, I would say, with the work of George Orwell, 1984, which is a book that is almost a playbook of the New World Order at this point, because the world is literally being divided in three, and it's like a cake, which, you know, each powerful supercontinental state takes their own piece. George Orwell talked about Oceania. Oceania, for him, would be ruled by Great Britain with an English socialist party. Of course, you have to understand that when Orwell wrote this, America wasn't nearly the same as it is today. It was not the same superpower. It wasn't so present on the global stage. That became, of course, evident after the involvement in the Second World War, and what happened after they were victorious with Adolf Hitler. We changed completely the whole nature of the world order. In fact, from that moment onwards, we have the new world order, which is actually now a post-Second World War order, which now is, of course, dated and is instead giving birth to what Orwell had predicted, so that Oceania is ruled by the United States rather than Great Britain. However, he had also predicted that London would become a very a city in decline, a city with many problems, and we are seeing that with our own eyes today. So, I mean, he was rather prophetic, George Orwell. He also talked about Eurasia. He talked about the fact that after the Soviet Union, Russia will absorb continental Europe, and that is what is happening literally as we speak. And then we have East Asia, which it's also another very prophetic take by George Orwell, because he talks about China as the leading nation, and all the various neighboring areas in Asia will be controlled by China. So all this is to state that George Orwell wasn't just somebody writing fiction. He was part of a milieu of very cultured, very intellectual people at the time. In England, we see people also like H.G. Wells in the same period using the term New World Order, which I also discuss in the article. And I explained that maybe, there were two contemporaries, but the difference between H.G. Wells and George Orwell was that George Orwell warned about new technology, because new technology will inevitably bring to some form of despotism, of dictatorship. So he was actually much more inclined in exposing any form of new technology for control purposes, while instead H.G. Wells saw this new technology as a positive thing, as something that could be used for the betterment of mankind. So two different takes, let's say, from that point of view. Somebody is thanking me for my book. Thank you so much. As a Jew, I'm very familiar with Rabbi Anterman. Of course, Rabbi Anterman has always been a great inspiration for those people who have studied the Sabbatean Frankists, as well as Gershon Scholem, as well. Recently, in recent times, we don't really have Jewish rabbis who discuss even the Sabbatean Frankists. There is maybe one or two academics, but there is no rabbis, because they are really scared. I mean, there is a typical leftist mindset today in the universities. And so paradoxically, when you have a guy like, for example, Pavel Macheko, who wrote this excellent book called The Mixed Multitude, dedicated to the Sabbatean Frankists, the problem is that they almost, because they are leftists, they almost view it positively. They almost view Shabbatai Zevi and Jacob Frank as two revolutionaries who modernized Judaism, who brought the transformation of Judaism, the secularization of Judaism as a positive thing, and not instead as a rejection of the Mosaic laws.
Leo, what I look at right now, I tell people, so we have the right and the left. So you have the left, which is communism, and you have the right now, which is Mussolini-style fascism. That's what we have, and we get one or the other, and we're trapped in this. And most of my viewers, I'm seeing your viewers. Hey guys, on Twitter and YouTube and all that, I'll get your comments up there. Sorry, I didn't know Leo was simulcasting, which is excellent. That is cool. I'll start putting your comments up there. I just noticed you there. So, anyways, we're stuck and there's no way out. And all I feel bad for the Trump people because look, Leo, people are looking for hope. They're hurting. It's getting worse. I cover the economy. The economy is a wreck. I mean,
I completely agree with you. In fact, the other day I was doing a show with a person who obviously didn't want to accept this, with somebody, from the MAGA movement. And after 20 minutes, we just had to interrupt the whole show. It wasn't live, fortunately, it was recorded. And we both decided, okay, we have nothing else to say because this person was staying in their positions. They were not really, wanting to accept the fact that Trump hasn't maintained his promises. And I stick to that. People say I'm naive because I believe in politicians. No, Trump wasn't a politician initially, and his first term, for me, was actually rather positive, and it actually gave me the strength and the will to then ditch Europe altogether, as you know, in 2019, come over here and started that process, which, of course, was a long process for eventually becoming American, naturalizing, and then giving up my Italian citizenship to avoid any further problems with Europe. Europe, as you know, is increasingly a dictatorship, technocracy, where you cannot say anything and where you will really be arrested only from what you write, what you say in a podcast, which is incredible, but that's what happens in Europe. So I was facing that kind of scenario. So for me, Trump and America represented a great constitution, which I am glad to now call my own, with the First Amendment that gives us this great possibility even today to talk together. Frankly, we are frankly talking, and we are talking with great honesty. But this is not possible in every country in the world, because in places like Italy, if you say something bad about the president, after 10 minutes you have the secret police at your door.
I had a viewer in France email me and tell me that's how it is in France too. We've got a question.
Yes.
And I'll get to that in a second. I have a quick question, and then, okay, everybody in my Rumble, if you guys have a question, because we're getting nigh to the time, if you have a question, shoot it into my chat. And I have a question here for you, but I have a question before I ask these guys these other questions. So Greenland, okay, everybody wants to know about Greenland. So why are we trying to buy Greenland? Is this rhetoric, or is this part of that condensation of the Western Hemisphere? Because it's kind of like in a weird spot.
Well, I mean, it's full of resources because of what's happening. I mean, global warming, we know it's not due by pollution. It's not created by pollution, but it's created by volcanoes, and it's created by other natural occurrences, also to do with the sun. And of course, the fact that the temperatures might increase might also facilitate the idea that that whole area is economically, and also it is definitely important, because if you are dividing the planet in three spheres of influence, this hemisphere needs to stay with America. So it's not, I mean, I understand that what is happening might upset a lot of people. I don't report it as being right or wrong. I just report it as facts. Facts. Right. The New World Order, we talked about it for decades, will become eventually a one-world government. But before that, it will go through different stages. And I remember once the former Italian president stating very clearly, very honestly, in a Lectio Magistralis in front of the university, the world of the future will be divided in supercontinental states. So the small nations like Italy or Switzerland or England or whatever, they are simply part of a larger thing, and they will fall under a larger supercontinental project. So that is why it's not about saying Trump is right or wrong. Trump is simply following the orders of the elite behind him, and Greenland has those resources which are very important rare earth minerals for the development of the future technology that the cyber Satan, which I call the AI and robotics, need.
AI is the manifestation of cyber Satan, isn't it? I wanted to ask you that too. Is that the physical manifestation of cyber Satan? It's no longer just on the web and in our computer. This is a physical manifestation.
Well, I mean, it's manifesting more and more, but at the end, there will be also an Antichrist figure that will take, control of the situation thanks to cyber Satan. Because let's not forget that in the next few years, we're going to have this growing transhumanism, this merger of man and machine. And in 10 years from now, it will be normal for most of us to just go around, doing this and scrolling things in real time. And probably the majority of the new generations will be almost brain dead, because now they're having problems in major universities in America because people after the pandemic don't know how to read. I mean, in 10 years from now with the AI, they will not know even how to wipe their own butts.
Right on. Really, this is crazy. Hey, these are definitely one of your guys. Welcome at Arconic Nemesis. He has a question. He says, "Hi, Leo. I wanted to ask, what was the reason Sabati Zebai and Jacob Frank were so influential to this day? Was it their public speaking skills, or had they used dark things to allure so many people?" I think maybe he's referring to dark magic.
Sure, absolutely. Well, they were, first of all, Shabbatai Zevi was recognized by more than half of the Jewish population in Europe as the Messiah. That was a religious position. Later on, when in 1666, he converted to Islam, he was no longer recognized as such by the majority of the Jews, but they continued as the Dommeh, and they became very influential also within the realm of secret societies, of the Western initiative system, of Freemasonry. Later on with Jacob Frank, there was actually a cousin of Jacob Frank, Moses Dobruska, who was the son of the first cousin of Jacob Frank, who was involved in the Asiatic Brethren, who became the first Masonic group to let the Jews in their lodges in Germany, and actually also connected to the Illuminati. So we can say that they were not simply two great, they were, of course, charismatic. But they were using black magic from the very start, clipotic magic, as it's called. They were reversing regular Kabbalah and making it something nefarious, something demonic. And that those forms of black magic was then presented within the lodges of Freemasonry, but in certain lodges like the Asiatic Brethren, who embraced all these teachings and presented them also outside of Judaism. So initially, Shabbatai Zevi did this for the Islamic world, and then Jacob Frank did that for the Catholic world. But together, they became the most influential Jewish sect when Jacob Frank near Frankfurt in Offenbach created this court, and all the various future bankers of the world, like the Warburgs, the Rothschild, the Schiffs, the Golds, all these groups became part of this Sabbatian Frankist sectarian banking cartel, which then evolved to the time of Jeffrey Epstein. And then, of course, Jeffrey Epstein with Les Wexner created that outlet, which was known as the Jewish Study Group, which became very important because Jeffrey Epstein is said to have used this group to build this network of high-ranking contacts in businesses, media, and politics. But in reality, this group was almost like the Illuminati of the Jewish Freemasons, which are the B'nai Brit, the Jewish form of Freemasonry, because the Jews couldn't still, after the experience of the Asiatic Brethren, join Freemasonry freely. So they eventually created the B'nai Brit, which became the largest fraternal Jewish organization in the world, which up until the 1920s had the similar aprons and regalia like the Freemasons, and then focused mostly on meetings like the Rotary Club or the Lions, as kind of the aesthetics were no longer important, the esoteric aesthetics, let's say. Today, when they're going to meet in Davos, the Sabbatean Frankists, the Jesuits, influence people, and all the heads of state, including Donald J. Trump, that is the modern think tank that emanates from the Illuminati idea, let's say.
The new Bilderberg.
Also the Bilderberg. No, it's not a new. Bilderberg continues to exist. It still has a role. The Jesuits were very important in the creation of the Club Bilderberg. But let's not forget that the Bilderberg is relevant for Europe most than any other country.
More so than the Western Hemisphere. Okay, thank you for that clarification. Leo, you answer a lot of questions that I have. And look, I really, I mean, I try to steer a little bit away from this. We do finances. We talk about self-improvement. We talk about guarding our spirit against cyber Satan, AI, the divide and conquer tactic that has been done. I believe Trump was used to part of his puppetry. The puppetry was to divide us and conquer us. What's going on in the streets today? We have APEC that has infiltrated our Congress and our Senate.
APEC, as I showed in my book, is just a creation that is controlled by Les Wexner and his friends from the mega group. So they are simply a tool. They are not.
The tool has, a lot of control, but we're worried. We're sending ICE in the streets to violate our rights and create a police state and get us used to it over the immigrants. It's just, it's mind blowing. And you bring a lot. The information you bring about a lot of the stuff that, like, look, Leo, I've been in this stuff since 2008. I've been, in the conspiracy theory world. I'm more of a what they call agorist, anarchist, capitalist, anarcho-capitalist, if you know what I mean. So I don't believe in political parties. I believe the bankers select who they want. That's as close as I can get with my factual evidence. Economically speaking, where does the money go? It goes to the central bank selling their product debt and making money off of it, investing in real commodities, and they're constantly in control. So because they control the monetary system. So I look at it.
Not forget that the ones who control the system are the ones who print the money, not the
yes. That's what I mean. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
So, for example, from the Bank of England all the way to the Federal Reserve.
Yes, that's exactly,
and then all the way to the European Central Bank.
Yeah,
it is printing the money that counts more than the bank itself.
Exactly. We had Edward G. Griffin on, and
my old friend. Send my regards.
He's a good guy. So I hope you can come back.
Absolutely, will be my pleasure. Today, of course, I'm glad that there was a lot of interesting questions. Also, I see a lot of people who are still in the chat. I'm glad that you invited me on, and I'm sure that we can have another important conversation in the months ahead, because there is a lot to talk about, and I know we only scratched the surface today.
I have a lot of questions, and I think Leo, I think I come at you maybe at a refreshing angle that you're not that you're not used to, but I might ask questions that other guests or other podcast hosts aren't going to ask you.
No, I'm absolutely,
and I love it because your answers are great.
No. I'm glad that you have this take, because, like I said, we have to be always inquisitive and asking questions. And there is people who simply don't want to ask questions when they think, that maybe Trump can be the savior of all their problems. He is no longer the savior once you go to the supermarket and you realize that the prices have actually doubled. You realize that the healthcare is becoming then a problem again. You realize that the wars abroad didn't stop. Actually, they are incrementing, and that he could have stopped the war in Ukraine in 24 hours if he simply stopped giving money to that criminal of Zelensky. So all this and much more. It's the disappointment of the true MAGAs, of the true America First, which I am glad to represent. I mean, I think that people in Major Taylor Green have a political future because they abandoned the sinking ship before it was too late.
I agree 100%. Where's the best place? And guys, get this book. This is a great read. It's fascinating, and something that I'm going to have to read twice because I had to really hurry up and read it because I'm such a busy guy. And so, but I'm going to read it again. So where's the best place to get your book for you? I got Amazon pulled up because that's where I found it.
Absolutely, Amazon. You can always go on Amazon, and you can also go. I think you have Amazon Canada here, though, on the screen.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know why. I have no idea why it's on there.
I think the price was a little bit different. So that is Canadian dollars, guys.
Okay, how much is it? I'm sorry about that, guys.
It's a bit cheaper, but Canadian dollars are a bit,
Yeah, well, yeah, our dollar's not very strong.
So no problem. You can find it on Amazon.com. You can find it all over the world on Amazon. You can also find the links to my latest books, of course, with my articles on leozagami.com, my website.
I love this place because he writes a lot of periodicals, so it's great to go here.
Yeah.
And because you keep up with stuff too. You're no slouch. This guy is no slouch, and that's why we have him here. And it was absolutely delightful, Leo.
Always a pleasure to be on the Tiger's Den, and we speak soon. Lion to the
let's give you a hold on. Don't go nowhere. We got to give you a roar, brother. We got to give you a roar.
Give me a roar. Give me a roar.
You have been a great guest.
Thank you for that.
Because this is Leo the Lion Zagami. All right.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much, my friend.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for promoting my books and for keeping up your great work. Take care, and we speak soon. God bless America.
We'll talk soon. Thank you, Leo. Good night, man. Arrivederci. Well, that was an absolute delight. I want to thank everybody for being here. This was great. Like I said, you guys, my viewers, are not used to me talking about too much about this stuff. But here's the thing. I really like Leo, and I want to see, I'm going to reach out to him and see if he's going to maybe come on a little bit more often. Because I like his outlook on things, and there's a lot of things I want to ask him. Because you guys know, I doubt a lot of what's in the alternative media. I doubt a lot of what's, I don't believe anything in the mainstream media. So, but we got to watch the alternative media because, they want to divide us. They want your soul. They want to mislead you. And if you don't think the alternative media has not been infiltrated, you're wrong. I know I might have some new listeners here. I want to tell you this. Listen, got to be careful. Guy like Leo, he's being honest. He's being genuine. And he's honest, whether it's fact or circumstantial. That's why that's why I entertain him. I have some guy coming on telling me a bunch of nonsense that they can't prove or they don't believe in, or they're not being honest, whether it's circumstantial or factual. I'm not going to have him on, or if I have him on, it's going to be very hard for me not to challenge them. Leo, I was asking him legitimate questions that I really wanted to know the answers to. Because I abandoned looking into the esoteric side of this, the bloodlines, all the families, because it's just there's going to be a point where we have to focus on making sure we are okay. And if we're too distracted by something that God can help us with, that's kind of more his arena. The part of my job, I feel, is to make sure people are prepared for that financially and physically and mentally and spiritually. That's why we're here. So, I agree with Risha M says Sabbatean Frankist is a fascinating topic. Skunk Hollow Rose Garden says, have him explain how the McKinnons and nuns run collective training. I went to school, and the Dominican nuns were my teachers, and their rulers were very quick, dude. Skunk Hollow says that was badass. Everybody enjoyed the conversation, Leo. Thanks for being here. It was great. But with that being said, remember, we're 10 minutes over. Tiger's tired. I'll do a special report on what's going on, what happened this week with the Japanese yen. It's very important. And it is a gaze into the future, if you will, of what's going to happen to our dollar, because Japan has devalued its currency to the highest order faster than most modern countries. And you're seeing what they're going through now, and it's very volatile, the value of their money. So that's got to be a nightmare there. That's extremely underreported here in the main, in the alternative and mainstream media. So we need to check it out. With that being said, remember, another thing we talk about here is your spirit, your love. We are in a gigantic technotronic, basically technocratic and technotronic propaganda mind-washing program. They're making us hate other people. They're making us hate people for their ideas. They're making it They're stealing our soul. They win when that happens. So love, the love of whatever creator you believe in. I believe in Jesus Christ. He sacrificed himself, selfless love, the ultimate act of love, the love of your God, of the God you believe in, whatever. We don't judge here, whatever you might mean. I can't judge that. Whatever it might mean to you. That selfless love that we all have in our hearts, that love that activates our conscience, that keeps us who we are. The most important thing we have is our individuality and our love. Those two things are super important. Okay? Don't let them steal your soul and steal the love out of you. You know, and we preach that in the Tiger's Den, and we got to keep rocking and rolling. We've got to keep that love in our hearts. Even if you disagree with someone, you have to make sure. And I've been horrible on Facebook lately. I need to do some atonement for that. Because, I'm calling conservatards, look at this. Why am I doing that? Now I'm losing now. Now they're winning because they're taking a small chunk of my soul. They're taking away my character by using technology on my Pavlovian responses of who I as a human being. They're using those things against me with technology, and they're making me chip away at my own character, chip away at my own soul. And you can add back to it through atonement, I believe. So I'm not going to let them do that. I'm going to be vigilant. So be vigilant of that. Keep loving your hearts, sharpen your thoughts, your actions, love each other, love all the people around you. I want to thank everybody for being here. Even the new people that Leo was simulcasting to. It's an honor that you guys were here. Thank you. And I am Angry Tiger, Angry Tiger's Den on Rumble, Angry Tiger's newsletter on Substack. We broadcast there as well. And Angry Tiger's Den on Twitter. Those are the easiest places to find me. And God bless one and all. And remember, when it comes to commodities, time is your most valuable commodity. Try not to waste it. Spend it doing something you love, with someone you love, improving yourself, or preferably all three of these things. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. And until we meet again.
Your time is your most valuable commodity. Cherish it and use it wisely. Until we meet again.